بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، إخوة الإسلام عباد الله, I'd like to touch on the issue of wiping the face with the hands after dua, as this is a particular subject matter which we find some that attribute themselves to al-minhaj as-salafi acting in a unbefitting way as it relates to the subject matter, acting in a way of, or having with them some unnecessary sternness and some unnecessary harshness, as if this particular issue is looked at on the same level as one who curses the companions, all of them. And the reality is, the subject matter is not exactly like that, and their attitude in this particular affair is due to their ignorance as it relates to the issue, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. And this was something that our elder Farid Abdullah would say, is that he hoped that when people went overseas and they learned that they wouldn't come back and be a source of destruction in the community, because they may have learned about particular affairs one way, meaning they didn't get a whole understanding of a particular affair, and so they think that the issue is cut and dry, yani one way, and in the reality there may be more to the affair that they're just totally unaware of. And I believe that this particular issue, the issue of wiping the face after supplication, is one of those issues, and this is why we find some with such a staunch and stern position as it relates to this issue. Now, to clarify what I intend, I want to quote the statement of Sheikh Ibn Baz from a fatwa that is found on his website. He states, أما مس الوجه باليدين اختلف فيه العلماء. He states, as for wiping the face with the two hands, and what's intended by this is after supplication, then the ulama, or the scholars, they differ on this issue. منهم من رأى استحبابه ومنهم من رأى عدم استحبابه. There are some from amongst the scholars that hold the position that it is recommended to wipe the face after supplication. And then there are those from amongst the scholars that hold the opinion of no recommendation. He continues, لأن الأحاديث الصحيحة المعروفة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ليس فيها مس الوجه بعد الدعاء. And he states, and that is because the authentic and well-known narrations from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is no mention within these authentic narrations of wiping the face after dua. And some of the well-known narrations, for like when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam raised his hand for istisqa, or seeking rain. And other than that, from amongst the narrations where the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands, there are many where it showed that he raised his hands in dua, but there is no mention of him wiping over the face after the dua. And this is what the Sheikh bin Baz intends by many well-known and authentic narrations. But then he continues, وَجَاءَ فِي أَحَادِيث ضَعِيفَ أَنَّهُ مَسَحَ بِيَدَيْهِ وَجْهَهُ. And then he states, but there does come in weak narrations that he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, wiped his face with his two hands. And so we see the position of Sheikh bin Baz as it relates to these narrations. He holds them to be weak. He holds them to be weak, right? However, he continues, فَإِن فَعَلَ فَلَا حَرَجْ وَإِن تَرَكَ فَهُوَ أَفْضَلْ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ. But he states, so if one does it, yani wipes his face after supplicating, then there is no objection. There is no objection. And if he abandons it, then this is better. Then this is better. Insha'Allah. And that is the statement of the Shaykh as it relates to this mas'ala. And his conclusion, if a person does it, there's no objection. If he abandons it, then this is better. And this is coming from one of the most prominent scholars upon Al-Minhaj As-Salafi in this day and time. In this day and time. So for those that think differently, then I would advise you to reflect off the statement of Sheikh bin Baz here. Alright? Reflect off that statement. Now, one of the things that I want to do, which is a little bit different from what I usually do in these clips, is I want to take a look at some of these ahadith that the Shaykh is referring to, and mention why some of the scholars state that they are weak. First, we have the hadith of Yazid ibn Sa'id, and it is collected by Abu Dawood, hadith 1492. Where stated therein, the narrator, he states, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا دعا فرفع يديه. He stated that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, when he would supplicate, when he would invoke Allah, he would raise his two hands. مسح وجهه بيديه, and he would wipe his face with his two hands. He would wipe his face with his two hands. This particular narration is considered to be weak by some of the Ahlul Ilm. And the reason for the weakness of this narration is due to a narrator by the name of Abdullah ibn Lahi'a. Abdullah ibn Lahi'a. And for the students of the science of hadith, then Ibn Lahi'a is well known. He's well known. And he's an individual whom the scholars of hadith differed over. Some of the scholars of hadith considered his narrations to be acceptable unrestrictedly. Others from amongst the scholars of hadith considered his narrations to be weak unrestrictedly. Unrestrictedly. And then you had a third group of scholars that made a distinguishment as it relates to his narrations. So they stated that, look, if he narrated prior to his the burning of his library, then the narrations are accepted, and they know when he narrated prior to his library being burned based off certain students narrating from him. So if you had certain students narrating from him, it was known that this was prior to the burning of his library. And so those narrations are accepted. But if he narrated after the burning of his library because he made mistakes, then his narrations are rejected. Now, just based off this difference of opinion amongst the Ahlul Ilm concerning this particular narrator, could cause the ruling on this particular narration, or any narration that he's a part of the chain in, to either be sound or weak. Sound or weak. And it's important to point out that even if he was considered to be, the narration was considered to be weak, Abdullah ibn al-Lahi'a is salih lil-istishhad, meaning if another chain came and it has some weakness from the weaknesses that are not severe and that can strengthen one another, like the weakness of irsal, the hadith is considered mursal, or someone in the chain is majhul hal, and thus forth and so on, then that chain can strengthen this chain and raise it up to what you would call hasan li ghayrihi. Hasan li ghayrihi. But Abdullah ibn al-Lahi'a, as it relates to this particular chain and this particular narration, he's not the only one that's considered weak in it. As we have another narrator, Hafs ibn Hashim ibn Utbah ibn Abi Waqqas, that he is likewise considered to be a defect in his chain. Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he stated, وَأَمَّا Hafs ibn Hashim فليس له ذكر في شيء من كتب التواريخ ولا ذكر أحد أن لابن عتبة ابن يسمى حفصا. He states, as for Hafs ibn Hashim, then there is no mention of him in the books of history, in the history books. There is no mention of him whatsoever. So his total identity is unknown. And then he continues, he states, and no one has mentioned that the son of Utbah had a son that was named Hafs. Had a son that was named Hafs. So what is understood is that maybe the mistake is coming from Ibn al-Lahi'a in this particular chain. But for that reason, this is why this hadith or this particular narration, its chain, is considered to be da'if. We have another narration that is found in the Jami' of Imam at-Tirmidhi, and it is upon the authority of Umar ibn al-Khattab. It is hadith 3386, where Umar, he states, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا رفع يديه في الدعاء لم يحطهما حتى يمسح بهما وجهه. He states, the Prophet Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would raise his hands when he would supplicate. He would raise his hands when he would supplicate, and he would not lower them until he had wiped his face. Yani meaning with his two hands. He had wiped his face with his two hands. Imam at-Tirmidhi considered this narration to be sound. Likewise, Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he says about this narration, وله شواهد منها حديث ابن عباس عند أبي داود وغيره ومجموعها يقتضي أنه حديث حسن. So Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, and his knowledge as it relates to the science of hadith is well known. He states about this hadith has what you call shawahid. And from these shawahid, and we'll explain what shawahid means in a second, from these shawahid is the hadith of Ibn Abbas that is collected by Abu Dawood. And we'll get to that hadith shortly. And other than it, and then he states, its entire compilation, the compilation of asanid for this narration, they necessitate that this hadith is hasan. They necessitate that this hadith is considered to be hasan and or graded to be hasan. So this was the position of Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, that this narration was hasan, and that is, for those that know the science of hadith, an acceptable narration and that which the narration implies or entails is implemented. Implies or entails is implemented. So what is intended by shawahid, as was stated by Al-Hafidh? Shawahid is the plural to shahid, and this is a science of hadith term which implies that when it comes to the tabaqa of the Sahaba, to the level or generation of the companions, you have one companion narrating something from the Prophet ﷺ, and you have another companion narrating the exact same thing from the Prophet ﷺ, narrating it verbatim as it relates to expression and meaning, or not verbatim like the other companion narrated it, but the meaning is exactly the same. The meaning is exactly the same. That is what is intended when you hear the scholars of hadith, when they discuss a chain, they say lahu shawahid. Yani that's what's intended by shahid, that there are other companions that narrated the same thing either by verbatim as it relates to verbal expression and meaning, or maybe the verbal expression is not exactly identical with the other companion, but the meaning is exactly the same. The meaning is exactly the same. So this was the statement of Al-Hafidh as it relates to this particular narration. But this narration, the reason for its weakness is due to a narrator by the name of Hamad ibn Isa al-Juhani. He is the reason why this particular narration is considered to be weak. And the scholars of hadith, when looking at their statements, we see this, it's clear and explicit as it relates to how they understood or how they looked at this particular narrator. Abu Hatim, he stated about Hamad ibn Isa, da'if al-hadith. Yani his narrations are weak. Al-Ajuri, he stated, or he quoted Abu Dawood stating that this individual is da'if. Rawa ahadith manakir. He stated that this individual is weak. He narrated hadith that were graded as munkar. And then Ad-Daraqutni also declared him to be weak. And these statements can be found in Tahdhib al-Tahdhib by Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. So that brings us to the next narration that Al-Hafidh was referring to upon the authority of Ibn Abbas, that is found in the Sunan of Abu Dawood, and this one is for Hadith 1485, where it's a long narration, but the point the point of reference for this hadith is a statement of the Prophet when he says, and ask Allah, yani ask Allah or invoke Allah, bi butun akuffakum, yani with the palms of your hands, with the palms of your hands, wala tas'aluhu bi dhuhuriha, and don't ask Allah with the backs of your hand upward. Don't ask Allah with the backs of your hand upward. فَإِذَا فَرَغْتُمْ فَامْسَحُوا بِهَا وُجُوهَكُمْ, and when you have finished, yani finished supplicating, then wipe your faces with them, yani with your hands. Wipe your faces with your hands. Abu Dawood, he stated about this narration, روي هذا الحديث من غير وجه عن محمد ابن كعب كلها واهية وهذا الطريق أمثلها وهو ضعيف أيضا. He states that this particular hadith was narrated from varying perspectives, all from Muhammad ibn Ka'ab, meaning Muhammad ibn Ka'ab, there's separate chains all leading back to Muhammad ibn Ka'ab. And he states all of these variations are weak. All of these variations are weak. Now Muhammad ibn Ka'b is a man within the chain. And he states, وَهَذَا الطَّرِيقُ أَمْثَالُهَا. And this particular chain is the most exemplary of the chains. However, it is weak as well. It is weak as well. And so, Abu Dawood is clearly stating that this particular chain is weak. And so, Muhammad ibn Ka'b is not the only reason for the weakness in this chain. We have another narrator, Abdul Malik ibn Muhammad ibn Ayman, and this individual is majhul. He's a majhul. Another reason for the weakness of this chain is Abdullah ibn Ya'qub ibn Ishaq. He's majhul hal. He's majhul hal. And then the third reason for the weakness in this chain is that this chain is munqati'. There is a drop in the chain, meaning that there's a narrator that's missing. And the drop in the chain is between Abdullah ibn Ya'qub and Muhammad ibn Ka'b. There is a drop in the chain there. This particular narration, it has a complete chain within the Sunan of of Ibn Majah. It has a complete chain within the Sunan of Ibn Majah, and this chain will be considered from the mutaba'at to this other chain. And what is intended by mutaba'at, it is similar to shahid. The only difference is it's not dealing with the companions, it's dealing with the remainder of the chain. Meaning, you may have a tabi'i. It may go back to a tabi'i or atba', someone from the third generation that's narrating a particular chain. Meaning, you have Abdullah ibn Umar, then Nafi', then someone from amongst the atba'i tabi'in. One individual. And then in another chain, you have Abdullah ibn Umar again, Nafi' again, and then a second tabi'i, right? Or atba'i tabi'i. So Nafi' will be the one, this chain will be mutaba'a. Nafi' will be the one that this chain is coming back to, right? In a sense. And so, when it comes to this particular chain, the narrator that is in agreement is a man by the name of Salih ibn Hassan al-Ansari. He is in agreement with Abdullah ibn Ya'qub, meaning Abdullah ibn Ya'qub narrated from Muhammad ibn Ka'b, and Salih ibn Hassan likewise narrated from Muhammad ibn Ka'b. Right? So they are muwafiq. These two individuals are muwafiq as it relates to this particular narration. However, Salih ibn Hassan al-Ansari, he's the reason for the weakness in this particular chain as well, as the scholars of hadith declared him to be weak. Imam Ahmed and Ibn Ma'in, both of them stated about him, laysa bi shay'in, he's nothing. Ibn Ma'in another time said about him, da'iful hadith. And Nisa'i said about him, matrukul hadith, that his hadith are rejected. For this reason, Al-Busayri, he stated, هذا إسناد ضعيف لاتفاقهم على ضعف صالح ibn Hassan. He stated that this chain is weak due to them, meaning the scholars, due to their agreement concerning the weakness of Salih ibn Hassan. He also said about this particular narration, وَلَهُ شَاهِد مِنْ حَدِيث ibn Umar. This hadith has a shahid, and we explain what shahid is with the hadith of Ibn Umar. Now I'm not sure what Al-Busayri means here, if he's referring to the hadith that we already mentioned that was from Umar ibn al-Khattab, because Ibn Umar in the chain is Ibn Umar narrating from Umar ibn al-Khattab what took place. So I'm not sure if he means that particular chain or if he means a narration of Ibn Umar that is found in Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir by Al-Imam At-Tabarani. Whatever the case may be, we've already discussed how the narration of Umar ibn al-Khattab is da'if. And the narration in Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir, it is likewise da'if due to a narrator by the name of Al-Jarud ibn Yazid. This individual is considered to be matruk, one who is accused of lying. And this is the grading of several of the scholars of hadith as it relates to this individual. In fact, some of the scholars of hadith considered this man to be a kadhab. They considered this man to be a liar. There is another chain of transmission that is found in Kitab al-Du'a by Al-Imam At-Tabarani, and I am not aware or sure of the authenticity of that particular chain. The point is that the scholars of hadith differ as it relates to these narrations, and some of the scholars of hadith like Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar consider all of the turuq being compiled necessitate that the hadith is hasan li ghayrihi, while others from amongst the scholars of hadith consider the hadith to be weak and unacceptable in an absolute sense. So the point that's being made here is that it's a affair in which the scholars differ. And so a person that is traversing upon al-minhaj al-salafi, he shouldn't approach this issue as if when he sees someone wipe his face after making dua, as if the person has just cursed the companions and all of the companions. Because it's far-fetched to believe that scholars of hadith declared this hadith to be acceptable, but then did not act upon what was in that narration. Especially when they explain to us that the fruits of knowledge is actions. The fruits of knowledge are actions in accordance with that knowledge. So when looking at this particular mas'ala, we should have that understanding, and we shouldn't go beyond bounds and act in a way that is unbefitting for a person upon the Sunnah and Salafiyah, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. In conclusion to this particular affair, I'd like to read the statement of Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymin in his explanation to Bulugh al-Maram, where he gives his summary of how one should conduct themselves as it relates to this, the differing as it relates to this issue. So it's that perhaps the individual could say, نحن لا ننكر على من مسح ولا ندعو إلى المس ولا نفعله. He said that we don't have disapproval for the one that wipes his face. However, we don't invite people to do that, nor do we do it. لا تمسحوا لعدم ثبوت السنة عندنا, meaning we don't wipe our faces due to the absence of it being firmly established within the Sunnah as far as we're concerned. ولا ننكر على من مسح اتباعا لبعض العلماء الذي جعلوا مجموع هذه الأحاديث يرفع الحديث إلى درجة الحسن. He states, but we don't show any type of disapproval for whoever wipes the face, following some of the scholars that make all the entire compilation of these ahadith, their asanid, yani their chains, when looking at all of them, that raise this hadith to the level of Hasan. مع أنه حسن لغيره ليس لذاته. And then he goes on to clarify the hukum concerning the grading of Hasan, meaning that it is Hasan by other than it, not Hasan in and of itself. Because you have two grades of Hasan, Hasan li dhatihi and Hasan li ghayrihi. A Hasan li dhatihi hadith stands by itself. It's Hasan based off itself, based off the chain and what's in the chain that would cause it to be considered Hasan and not Sahih. But it's an acceptable hadith without a doubt. But he's stating that he's making a distinguishment that it's not Hasan li dhatihi, it's Hasan li ghayrihi. It's Hasan by way of other narrations. Because basically a Hasan li ghayrihi hadith are two weak hadith. But these two weak hadith, it is the type of weaknesses that are in the chain that cause the hadith to be strengthened and its grading to be raised from weakness to being acceptable, yani being Hasan li ghayrihi. And then he states, Fallahu a'lam, and Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala knows best. So this is how the person that is upon the sunnah should approach this issue. This is how the person upon the sunnah should approach this issue. Unfortunately, and this is the reason why I'm pointing this out, is because I've seen people on the internet, seen people in person approach this issue as if a person were cursing all of the companions, or was saying that the Quran is created, or was saying that the Quran is incomplete, or was saying that Jibril betrayed Allah by giving a revelation to Muhammad when he was supposed to give it to Ali. These types of inhiraf, this type of inhiraf, then you deal with this type of inhiraf in a different way. But as for this issue, although some of the scholars like Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah considered it to be a bid'ah, this particular issue is an issue in which the scholars differ. And so you can't treat those two issues the same way. And again, it's like I said, the reason why I believe we find this happening is because those who hold this position learned the issue one way. A lot of times they're totally unaware that there is a difference of opinion amongst the scholars. Or the teachers maybe even the teachers that they took knowledge from may not have even known, or for whatever reason they're being disingenuous and not presenting the whole issue to the people that are sitting in their durus, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. The point, it is a mas'ala khilafiyya, and we should conduct ourselves when dealing with others in this particular manner, while understanding that it is a mas'ala khilafiyya and not khilaf al-tudad. It's not from the affairs of khilaf al-tudad, it's khilaf al-afham. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. Naam.